seconds.
Where's Mayor at? Is she ordering food?
The following is an exclusive
I get more
presentation
program.
of BYU Athletics in association with BYU Broadcasting. It's time to talk BYU football. You're tuned in to the Coordinators Corner, live from JCW's in Provo, giving you the inside scoop on BYU football from the coaches themselves, JCW's, the Burger Boys. To lead things off, let's head live to your host, the voice of the Cougars, Greg Wrubell.
Welcome back inside JCW's in Provo. Greg Wrubell here with you. After our bye week, we are back for the Coordinators Corner with you from 12 to 1 today and every Monday until the end of the season. As always, we promise you 2 coordinators in the span of an hour. First half hour today, Coach Ed Lamb, Coach Elisa Tuiaki coming up in half hour number 2. And so it is. We welcome in BYU's assistant head coach, special teams coordinator, and safeties coach Ed Lamb back to the program. Hello, Ed.
Hey, Greg.
So give us a sense of what the bye week was like schedule-wise and objective-wise for the guys.
For the players, we have to strike a balance between physically preparing them for the long season. So it was a real emphasis in the weight room. The guys ran hard and lifted hard with the strength coaches. There was quite a bit of film review early in the week, and then early in the week putting the previous game to rest, and then later in the week in preparation for this upcoming week. But really we're trying to strike a balance for the players between using the bye week for what it was originally designed for and to bring them back and heal up some injuries. There's not a football player on our team that's played any significant number of snaps that's not trying to work through some type of pain. And so try to alleviate some of that, try to give them a chance to recover, and then also prepare for the next game.
In putting the previous game to bed, we're a full week out from it, but we didn't get a chance to talk about Wisconsin. How much of that played into what you wanted to do last week, and how much of it was a lot more looking forward?
It's all about looking forward. It's going into the season with bye week, and then as far as a player schedule goes, it's important that those guys can count on that time for the number of practices that we have, an opportunity to maybe go home for a weekend, go see a younger brother play somewhere else in the state on a Friday night. And so we really don't want to get into a situation. I've been on the coaching staff where we've had a disappointing result the week before a bye, and then the head coach suddenly says, "We're not very good. We have to grind, and we're going to practice 6 times this week and go back to a training camp schedule." And invariably, every team that I've been a part of, it's just completely fell flat on its face and made things worse.
So last week wasn't that week for you guys?
No, it's not that week. I think Kalani understands the long-term vision of what we're trying to accomplish. It is never a good idea to ebb and flow as a coach emotionally based on the results of the previous week. We have no idea how good we are, how good Wisconsin is, how good LSU is. I mean, that's not the way to do it. What we need to do is take a look each week at our practice video and at our game video and at our personnel, and make sure that we're constantly trying to strive to be the very best team that we can be on the next Saturday, whenever that is.
So when you look back at last week, what do you think really helped the team get better for this next week to come and the rest of the season? More the rest recovery aspect?
Yeah, I think we had enough rest that the boys were anxious. We just came off of the practice field. I came directly from practice. The guys were anxious to get out on the practice field. There was a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm. That is not typically the case on a Monday or Tuesday practice after a loss. And so I think from that standpoint, a little bit of rest and recovery helped the guys physically. They look good. I think some of the guys that were having some nagging shoulder and ankle injuries, they seem to be back in full speed and ready to go. It was a full padded practice today, and it looked really, really I think it was the intensity of the practice was where we wanted it.
You just said you don't know how good LSU, Wisconsin's going to be. You've just played, though, back-to-back ranked teams. Mm-hmm. They're all in the top 25. You've got one more coming up here in a couple of weeks. Having just gone through this 3-week set of games, how good do you think those teams really are?
Oh, I thought they were really good on the days that we played them, and I thought that we were short of where we have to be. The BYU deserves, as a program, as an institution, it deserves to be a perennial top 25, a perennial contender for what now is the playoffs, and we're not there. And so we fell short. We failed. However, I don't know that I could say it any more succinctly than that. We must get better. We need to get better. We're striving to get better, and I credit those teams for where they're at. But in none of my years of playing college football, coaching college football, have I ever seen a team start consistently in the top 25, and then that top 25 is the same at the end of the year, or a team that starts poorly. It doesn't always doom you to a poor season or a poor finish, regardless of opponent. I think a lot of times fans get carried away with, is Utah State as good as this team or that team? That doesn't matter. For us, the final analysis are we as good as we can be on the Saturday that we're playing against whatever opponent we're playing, whether it's the Oakland Raiders or Utah State or some other team. We want to make sure that we're as prepared as we can be. That's our final analysis.
And through 4 Saturdays, you probably think you haven't been your best on any of the 4 you played yet to this point.
No, that's the nice part about an opponent. It's the nice part about playing quality opponents is they can expose you when you're not at your best. And so we've learned some things. We've been humbled as a team, as a coaching staff. And the only thing to do that's acceptable in my mind is to get better.
Coach Satake, post-Wisconsin, we were talking to him in the broadcast booth, and I brought up the schedule component, how tough it has been. And he said, I appreciate you kind of giving me an out with the schedule, but we're not into that. We're not into talking about how good these, because we expect to be one of those teams and be playing with those teams. Is that fairly accurate, how you feel as well?
Absolutely. Yeah, we feel we all, as coaches, came here because of our experience at BYU. Most of our coaches have experience at playing at BYU, as you know, or being students at BYU. And we know the tradition, we know the history, we know where BYU deserves to be, and it's something that we take very serious. Our stewardship of this program is something that we take very serious, and we're not where we need to be. We're failing.
Emotion and urgency has its place, but ultimately it's going to come down to execution more than it is a desire. Willingness is clearly a part of it, but it's going to come probably down to a better executing team, top to bottom. Fair?
Yeah, motivation and desire are really overrated, and that's the stuff of movies. If you've played sports at a high level, you realize that motivation goes up and down. Teams play their best team, or individuals. You can't by definition, you can't always play your best. You can't always play your most motivated. So what really matters is being the most prepared you can be, physically, mentally, and playing to the best of your ability on that given day. And hopefully, in an opponent final sum analysis, hopefully you're better than your opponent.
Coach Ed Lamb with us here, Coordinator's Corner. Coach Elisa Tuiaki, D coordinator, coming up in the second half hour. Seeing as bye week is some self-assessment, what maybe conclusions did you draw after taking a good look at your areas of responsibility during this last week?
I feel like that we must be much more dynamic in the special teams to supplement our field position. I think just looking mostly at the previous game in Wisconsin, we did not play well on offense or defense in comparison to our opponent. The special teams must step up in those areas and supplement field position, put our offense on a shorter field, flip the field with turnovers, big returns, and we just did not get that done. And then on the defensive side, I think I deal a lot with the secondary and the safeties, of course, and I think that we did not challenge enough in the secondary. We allowed open access to their quarterback. Their quarterback on that day was incredibly accurate. I felt like he played his best game, but we have to take our responsibility in that as well. We need to challenge receivers more. We need to be more confident in what we do, and we're working very hard at that.
On the special team side, so many different components of special teams. There are areas in which you're actually doing quite well, areas in which you'd like to do better. Your net punt game, your punt efficiency game has actually been quite solid through 4 games.
It is. We had the one punt get away from us. We had a low line drive punt at LSU, and their returner got some significant yardage on us, and that's really been the only punt return of any significance so far on the season. We've got to get better in our punt return game. I think there's more out there. I think I've got guys that are capable and willing and want to make that a better piece of what we do, and so I've got to take a lot of the blame on that myself to be a better tactician and to get our guys a better plan moving forward.
You guys are in negative punt return yards for the year. I think it's -5 on a very small number of returns.
Yeah.
Do you look at personnel and say, well, we'll try something different there, or do you say, the personnel's fair, it's other things that need to change?
Always looking at personnel on a daily basis, and that has nothing to do with. I mean, you can be the best punt returner in the nation and be at -1 through a few games in the season. It's really about opportunities, and I don't feel like there's been. I feel like we've had one good opportunity to return one, and we needed to make one guy miss, and there was a lot of yards available, and we did not get that done. And so our punt returner takes that on himself. I take that on myself for not coaching him better to take advantage of that opportunity. But really, we don't want to get carried away on punt return numbers. What I want to make my evaluation on is what they're doing daily in a practice setting. And then, of course, some guys have a knack for stepping up in games and in big games, in the biggest moments in the biggest games. And so, I have to evaluate that too. But we definitely wouldn't want to put too much on one or two missed opportunities.
Gotcha. All right, we'll take our first break. We'll come back with Coach Ed Lamb. He's BYU Special Teams Coordinator, Safeties Coach, and Assistant Head Coach. We've got Coach Elisa Tuiaki, D Coordinator, coming up in the second half hour. We're live at JCW's in Provo for the Coordinator's Corner. We're back with more right after this.
Hey, Dave, could you pour me some of that?
Sure, no problem. Okay, thank you. If I have to add, if I were to add a second option on my forward spotting board, would there be a second option as I show? That's a second. He's been working more and more in practice. Showing some of the plans. He's got some reps to do this time. Yes, sir. Overall abilities. Was he the primary? Might ask you about this in the next segment. Watching Utah State's unblocks, because they block 3 or 8, they do. And sometimes when you set 8 up there, it's really very helpful. Yeah, they've got 3 already. Mondays, 12 to 1 here at JCW's in Provo for the Coordinator's Corner. I'm Greg Wrubell. He is Coach Ed Lamb. Coach Elisa Tuiaki with us for the second half hour from 12:30 to 1. Stick around for that. Your questions, comments on Twitter can come in with the hashtag CCBYU, hashtag CCBYU, CC for Coordinator's Corner. Coach Lamb, in the safety room, you've had a couple of guys who've had to miss portions of games and/or games here through a few games. Zane Anderson missed the last game, I think. Mike has missed a game and a half. For a combination of things. That's been a bit of a challenge here through 4 games, hasn't it?
It has. Yep. Fortunately, I feel like we have got good depth at that position, and so there's been another guy. It's really the burden is on the preparation piece. We have only a very finite amount of practice reps per day and per week, and so to get guys prepared in a week's time to play a full game plan can be a little bit of a challenge. But fortunately, those guys have kept their head in it, and there's a guy that's ready to step in.
Zane had a pick in the opener against Portland State. At that time, BYU recorded at least 1 pick in 14 straight games. Every game last year, first game of this year. Since then, no INTs defensively after that nice long run of 14 straight. What has kind of been maybe leading into that particular stat?
Well, we haven't stopped the run. We have schematically, our base defense is designed to put a lot of pressure on our secondary and to stop the run. We gang up at the line of scrimmage and stop the run. And what we're trying to do is get teams into pass situations either by taking the lead or by taking advantage of a long yardage situation, second and long, third and long. And that's when most of our interceptions have occurred. The Portland State game was another example of that. The opponent was backed up late in the game. They have to score. They have to throw the ball with the clock. And we're able to pick on that. So we've got to stop the run first up front and then put teams in obvious pass situations. That was one of the problems, again, against Wisconsin, where they were running the ball very consistently, and for plus yardage, they didn't have a lot of great big breakout runs. And some people call that bend but don't break. It's really just sound defense and hustling to the ball. There's no bend but don't break philosophy that I'm aware of. We want to stop the run at the line of scrimmage and force them into pass situations. Wisconsin was able to drop back in pass situations when they wanted what we call control downs, 1st and 10, 2nd and 5, and 3rd and whatever. And so we weren't really into our pass defensive sets.
Opposing pass completion percentage has been very high the last 3 games.
That's right.
And again, there's more components than just how you're playing in the secondary when it comes to how well a quarterback feels comfortable there in the pocket to do things.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and I would say we've got a pattern right now over 3 games where we're not stopping the run consistently enough that we can put a team in pass situations where our front can tee off on the pass and our secondary can get more into a challenging situation. We are 100% sold out to stop the run, and we haven't been able to do it.
From 2006 through 2016, so an 11-season span, BYU's yards per rush allowed has been under 4. That's for 11 straight years. It's at 4.12 now, but it's over where it normally is. 2005 is the last season where BYU allowed more than 4 yards per rush, and we've got 13 or 14 games to play before we can say how good this rush defense is going to be, but it is a higher number than normally allowed. And when you are looking at yards per rush, 0.2, 0.3 can mean a lot by the end of the game.
It sure does. Yep, absolutely. And I'm glad you say that because you won't hear it out of my mouth that we are a poor rush defense. Right now we're playing unacceptably in our rush defense, and that's causing us to have some pass issues as well and not be able to get into some of the pass concepts coverage-wise that we would like to get into. We've got to do a better job. We expect to do a better job. I think we have the players to do a better job, and so it's incumbent on us as coaches to get it done. Yeah,
that was the question, I guess, too, was after 4 weeks, you still feel the pieces are there to be able to be put in the right places to have success this year moving forward.
Yeah, very, very confident. And that, part of that's just my personality and my optimism. I like to believe. I don't know how to coach this game other than to believe in the guys that we have on the team. I believe in the guys that we have. I think there's always personnel decisions to be made throughout the season. The starting lineup should or typically does and probably should change throughout the season as guys become more confident, more healthy. Other guys become less confident and aren't hitting their stride. And so we've got to continue to evaluate personnel. But just looking at it from an overall standpoint, I love our players. I love our chances. The goal is to win each week, but it's also to get better throughout the season, to hopefully have a feeling at the end of the season like we could beat anybody on our schedule at any time.
Now, this isn't unprecedented territory. You were 1-3 just last year. Where are maybe some similarities to the way you felt through 4 last year, maybe contrasted to how it is in 2017?
Sure, there are a lot of similarities. I think, in the teams that we played last year, as we built a 1-3 record, we really some of our games were closer, but the common denominator was we were having a tough time of consistently moving and scoring on offense. We were holding the scores down fairly low on defense during that stretch. That was an early season pattern that didn't hold for the rest of the season, and that's so often the case. And as coaches, we know that and we realize that this is not a situation where we feel like, geez, we got a bunch of great defensive players and let's do something different on offense. That's not the case at all. What we need to do is stick with our plan. We always need to tweak the plan. We always need to evaluate what we're doing as coaches, the way that we're motivating, the way that what we're doing tactically and technically. But there's no question in my mind we have all the pieces that we need to be successful, and we just have to get it done as coaches.
You alluded to some components of it, but a question from Twitter comes in via Travis Mortensen, who says, what do you say to the players to believe in a more optimistic future and not get weighed down from the slow start?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. I think number one, for me personally, and I feel like all coaches should do this, but for me personally, it's to model confidence, to walk in and I've been on coaching staffs. I've been a player where you feel like the coach comes in front of you every week and pleads with the team how good we can be, and gosh darn it, guys, we're so close to being a great team. I really believe in you guys. I think that's wasted language. What I want to do is show up like I did this morning. The first meeting we have every week is a special teams meeting. I've got the whole team right in front of me, and it is how much information that I can feed our guys in a 20-minute span. And I challenge myself to it's really a competition for me. How much information can I give them and how quickly? And I want them to know that I'm pouring 100% of my energy in. I think players can sense that if coaches are willing to put in that much energy and that much time and be that prepared and bring that much enthusiasm to a meeting, then we haven't given up on them.
How much do you believe they're able to conceptualize in 20 minutes, say?
Well, I'm a proponent of simplicity, and so it's really about a lot of the details that I'm bringing are as they can incorporate it into their plan. So we have an overall system scheme on defense and in coverage and on special teams, and I think that most guys can handle that piece of it, and I don't like to change that up a lot. But from there, it's how many details that I can hit them with, and some guys can carry a lot more details and it shows up in their plays. Other guys don't carry as much detail, maybe play a little harder, and it's on me as the coach to try to mesh that and put the best 11 guys out there.
Okay, Coach Lamb is with us in the first half hour of today's Coordinators Corner. Coach Elisa Tuiaki coming up at 12:30. We'll take a break, and after the break, we'll take a look at the Utah State game coming up on Friday night. Get some thoughts on that, and also your questions via Twitter at hashtag CCBYU, hashtag CCBYU, the CC Coordinators Corner. This is the Coordinators Corner at JCW's in Provo. We're back right after this.
Hi, I'm Ned Siegfried. It's great to see the Cougars back in action.
Okay, thank you.
We all know that football is a team sport, and no matter how talented
Is that your geographical area? It is.
BYU Sports Network. Now let's rejoin the voice of the Cougars, Greg Wrubell.
Welcome back inside JCW's here in Provo for the Coordinators Corner. Every Monday from 12 to 1 we are here. I'll be visiting with two of BYU's three coordinators, and the two this week are Coach Ed Lamb with special teams and Coach Tuiaki with the defense coming up at the bottom of the hour. Speaking of special teams, we talked about some punt and punt return earlier. Kickoff return, since we last visited, Jonah Trineman has become more of a favored option for you at kick return, and he's done fairly well.
Yes, I think there's two. I think there's two factors in that. Aleva Hifo did a nice job for us all last year. He's still doing a good job in practice. I have a high level of confidence in Aleva. Aleva's a little more of a shake guy. He tends to want to kind of groove and shake and find openings. Jonah hits a little more downhill, and Aleva also was coming off of shoulder surgery this season, and so it just felt like that Jonah was the better option there going into week 2, and he's held on to the spot.
I don't watch every deep snap, but I have noticed that Mitch Harris and Matt Foley have both gotten usage. How are you kind of determining who's the guy?
That's a day-to-day and week-to-week analysis. Matt Foley is clearly the number one snapper on both what we call the short snaps and the long snaps. The short snaps being PAT and field goal, and the long snap being punt. Matt is the most consistent on that. Mitch has improved so much to the point where it's really a very small amount that Matt has an advantage in the short snap game, but Mitch has shown to be a much better protector. And so we had some areas, last year in the Boise State game, for example, with the winning field goal on the line where they got a lot of penetration up the middle. So we need to do a better job at blocking. Right now, Mitch is giving us that. Still have a really high level of confidence in Matt, and it's an ongoing thing. Matt is not giving up that job lightly. He came and said, "Coach, I just want to talk to you once about it and let you know that I'm not giving that thing up. I respect your decision, but I'm continuing to fight for that job back."
Now, because he's very noticeable when he's out there on the line on special teams, Mo Longi was not available last game. How's he doing?
Mo's working through a minor injury. It's a non-surgical injury to his ankle, lower leg, and just working through that right now, and hope to get him back as soon as possible. I don't know if that'll be this week or not.
But as is the custom, coaches won't really discuss injuries unless it's a season-ending thing, and he's just one of those guys that we're kind of seeing kind of day-to-day, week-to-week.
Yeah, he was at practice today in full pads and out there and working hard, so hope to get him back ASAP.
Okay, to Utah State now. Their kicker is 8 for 8 on field goals, 15 for 15 on the PATs, and a long of 52. So clearly, USU's coaches don't have too many concerns with their kicker right now. How are you with your kicking game? And I mentioned the 52-yard field goal. It's been 11 years since BYU's had a field goal of 50 yards or longer. How much of that do you anticipate being a part of your special teams arsenal moving forward?
Oh, I think it's good. I think the key for the coaching staff, this is mostly a head coach's responsibility to determine whether we're in 4-down territory or field goal territory. But we always want to recruit the very best players that we can, and then have the right philosophy for them. And right now, we need to hit with our offense. We need to hit about the 26-yard line before we feel like we're 3 out of 4 on field goals. And no kicker is really demonstrates an 8 for 8 type level. That's a hot streak, and you can be a 3 out of 4 kicker and go 8 for 8. And so he's on that kicker for Utah State's on an incredible hot streak. Does an excellent job. We hope to put some pressure on him and break his streak.
Now, they put some pressure on punters. They've got 3 blocked punts right now, which leads the country. What is their secret to getting it done? I know one came just this past week against Idaho State. They've got 2 others in there. What do you see?
Studying Utah State's game against San Jose State, I have never seen a more dominant special teams performance than Utah State over San Jose State. There were 2 surprise onside kicks. Really, they were sky kicks that landed, and then Utah State was able to recover it. There was a punt that was muffed by San Jose State and recovered deep in their own territory by Utah State. There was the punt block, as you said. It was a 53-yard field goal. Originally was what was on the stat sheet, but I thought it was 52 when I watched the video myself. Just an amazing.
So all over the place, they were excellent.
All over the place, and they have been all year. They've got a very good special teams coach. They put a lot of emphasis in special teams. I see starters sprinkled out throughout their special teams units. It'll be a real challenge for our players this week.
From the defensive side, looking at their offense now, the quarterback Myers leads the team in yards per carry. So you know what you're dealing with there with a multifaceted component.
Yeah, he's smart. I think that you say yards per carry, and that doesn't surprise me. I actually hadn't looked at it that way, but he's not one of these quarterbacks, like, for example, to compare him with Utah's quarterback. Against us, Utah's quarterback looked to make the tough yards, the 3, the 4, the 5-yard gain. Obviously, every offensive play is designed to go the distance, but Utah State's quarterback really doesn't carry the ball much for the typical control down type yardage, 3 to 5 yards. He's looking for a big opportunity to pull it and run, and so he's had some very big plays on the season. I think a 60-plus yard touchdown against Utah State, for example, and against San Jose State.
Yeah, the pass attack has not been the strongest element for Utah State to this point. More picks than TDs, but the ground game's been consistent enough, and the quarterback gives them the extra option that not every team has.
He does, and he does a very good job. Their screen game is what's on point, and so his percentage of completions is pretty
high 60s right now. Yeah,
he does a really good job with that. He's a smart quarterback. They don't really attempt to push the ball down the field much. If they're pushing the ball down the field in a drop-back passing game, it's typically a very long-yarded situation, and an advantage to the defense, kind of like I was talking about before, getting into your adjunct coverages and defensive line teeing off on the pass rush. And so it's probably not a fair assessment for them. It's really not part of their offense. They're a triple option run style offense with an RPO screen game.
Last thing for Coach Ed Lamb, and it's kind of relative to where this BYU or this Utah State game fits in the overall complexion of the season. We've talked earlier about it's important to be your best on the one day we're talking about. How much importance do you think that this one game could have on the course of a season, as you are at a bit of an early crossroads here at 1-3 coming off the bye?
Well, that's a really good question. I have to answer it this way. Just to win this week is the most important thing that could happen for our football team. But to say it, to say that to try to put one game in context of the whole season, for example, a loss this week or next week or the week after shouldn't turn into 2 or 3 losses because the importance of that game was overstated. The importance of this game is that it is the only game right now on the schedule. It is the most important game this Saturday, and we're putting every piece of our energy into this game.
And it's an in-state game, and those have their own unique characteristics when you get into guys who've played against guys for a long time.
They do, absolutely. We take a special pride in playing for our school, and we know that our school takes these games more seriously, and our players know they know players on the other team. Coaches have relationships as well, and so there's an extra piece on the line.
All right, well, Coach Lamb, good luck on Friday night. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Greg.
All right, that's Coach Ed Lamb. We'll come back with defensive coordinator Elisa Tuiaki as the Coordinator's Corner continues from JCW's in Provo. Back after this.
For over 100 years, the skilled electricians of IBEW Local 354 have helped Salt Lake City and the state of Utah grow and prosper. Our state-of-the-art apprenticeship program prepares our members for safe, quality electrical construction. Ask for IBEW electricians and get the job done right. The first time, on budget, every time.
The time is now to hire IBEW electricians.
Jump farther, climb higher, and save more. With Mountain America's Epic Balance Transfers, you'll get a 3% cash bonus. Simply transfer a loan balance to a Mountain America Visa credit card, and we'll pay you 3% of the transferred amount. It's a great opportunity to switch to and save money.
Did that come off, Greg?
The Cougars, Greg Wrubell.
Welcome back inside JCW's The Burger Boys. We're in Provo. We are every Monday from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock conversing with 2 of BYU's 3 coordinators. Today, Ed Lamb, first hour. He was great. And Coach Elisa Tuiaki, defensive coordinator, now with us till the top of the hour. Coach E, good to see you again.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be back.
So how was the bye week of most benefit to you and your guys?
I think getting away from football for a little bit. That's always good, kind of keep things in perspective and spend a little bit more time with family. And, I think you can – I've been on teams that have taken it both ways. One team practices harder and gets after a little bit more and grinds their players a little bit more. And Coach Itake just felt like it was probably more important for us to just kind of cut football loose and go be a student, go be a family member, and come back, and did that with the coaches as well. So I thought it was good. It was refreshing. Everybody was hungry to get back and get after it.
That's the thing. Based on what Coach Lamb said last half hour, what you're just alluding to right now, today's practice, which was fully padded, was energetic because you have been off for a week.
Yeah, it was really energetic, and we took some time off as well as coaches, but yesterday, Saturday, as football was being played throughout the country, we started texting each other back and kind of starting to talk scheme a little bit more and everything. So we were kind of anxious to get back at it as well.
Question coming in, and by the way, we'll get questions for Coach Tuiaki coming at hashtag CCBYU, CC for Coordinators Corner. Rich Wanacott tweeted in from somewhere overhead. He's flying today, and from an airplane. He tweeted, how do you keep the locker room intact and the coaches united after a bit of a slow start?
Just sticking to the plan. We got a great head coach who is always keeping the morale up. Focusing on maybe more principle than anything, just so that those guys know that it's principle that's going to keep us through, all these tough times. And, tough times kind of come and go, but if we just stick to the things that we know are never changing, like hard work and just loyalty and trust and love and all those things, you can always focus on that, and things will come back around where they need to be.
What kind of sense do you get from the guys in your room when you get together on how they're still hanging together right now?
They're obviously disappointed, but I think that they're coming closer together. And they Fred and some of the other captains, called a team meeting last Monday, and it was just them, just a players meeting, and they got back together and talk a little bit more about just how they wanted the season to go and getting back on track and kind of getting a little bit more swag into their step and all that stuff. And so I thought that was a big positive, that the leadership stepped up and was trying to take over the thing.
There has to be a belief that the guys in the room and the pieces of the puzzle are still the right guys and the right pieces, right?
Right, absolutely. And I think they believe it. They just kind of more than anything, just hard on themselves about expectation and responsibility, and everybody just being accountable to the team.
Okay, Twitter question for Coach Tuiaki. What are one or two things the D can do to be more disruptive? I know you want about 3 takeaways a game. You've got 3 takeaways through 4 games, I think, right now. So that needs to step up to meet your objectives. What do you think about that?
As we watch film and go back and just evaluate things, there's just a lot of little things, The biggest thing, especially with a lot of interceptions, comes when D linemen are a little bit more disruptive. And so not just getting sacks, but tip balls. If we're not getting to the quarterback, we're getting our hands up, which we're not doing consistently. We've got to tip some balls, and it ends up turning into takeaways, which is always a boost for the guys' morale on the sideline. And we haven't been helping the offense that way. But those type of things, just making sure that everybody's doing all the little things right,
In your perspective, how much of the takeaway game is randomness and luck, and how much of it are known? These are the things you can do to make sure your takeaway number is high, because you'll see teams be a 33 takeaway team one year and a 13 takeaway team the next year.
I think a lot of it can be controlled, but at the same time, if an offense is really good at holding on to the ball and doing the little things right, and you're not doing it as well, then it'll show up in that stat. And so we've got to be more disruptive up front with the D-line. We've got to be tighter in coverage. And, when you start to sync up the timing of the D-line's disruption with the timing of how well you're playing really aggressive man coverage and just tight coverage, and you start to see more takeaways that way, at least in the interceptions. But I think most of our takeaways are fumbles or just, jumping on loose balls and all that, and which is great. But we've got to create more in the pass game.
After going 14 straight games with a pick, you've gone 3 straight games without one, and Coach Lamb talked about that in our first half hour. And it is more than just defensive backs making or not making a pick. It's really what's happening in the 7 guys in front of them too.
Right. It all has to sync up together. When you're playing aggressive, tight coverage, and the quarterback, feels like his world is collapsing on him, then you start to see things like that. But right now, we're not creating enough pressure up front. Quarterbacks and offenses are doing a really good job getting rid of the ball or protecting them with, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys. A lot of the passes, at least earlier, we were starting to see a lot of max protection where they were doing a good job protecting the quarterback, but then also just timing and everything of the offenses that we faced has been good. So we've got to do a better job disrupting that timing.
Now, when your offense isn't scoring a lot, do the defensive coaches and guys feel more incumbent to make the big play, to do a sudden change play, to score on defense, those kind of things to help the team out?
Yeah, which I think it's a good thing to feel that way, but a lot of times guys reaching out of their realm, makes it where you end up giving up more plays. And so trying to keep them reeled in and just playing and sticking to the game plan is really the tough thing, I think, in situations like that.
1-3 start this year, 1-3 start last year. Asked this to Coach Lamb as well. What feels very similar? What are some differences maybe from the first 4 last year to this?
Probably the fact that we were in the games, last year. coming down to the wire. I think you don't like walking away from a loss, but you always feel like you were just kind of right there. One or two things go your way, and it's a game. But especially this last game against Wisconsin, they just thumped us. They thumped us good, and we weren't as competitive and do anything on offense and defensively. We got into situations that we wanted, but just didn't cover. And so I think just the competitiveness is probably the most disappointing thing from last year to this year.
Now, coaches will always say, no matter when the bye week comes, it was a good week for us for whatever reason. But seeing as you did just get thumped, why was it a good time to have this extra time before you play again?
We had nobody really talks about it, but we have a lot of guys that are banged up, lost a lot of guys, and obviously the most important guy, which is the quarterback, is a big deal. But I mean, we don't talk about injuries much to the media either. But
right.
I mean, we're missing a lot of guys, and so getting those guys back and getting those guys back healthy, and some of the guys that didn't practice all week that ended up playing. Just kind of getting their feet back under them is important.
I recall before the season began, we were talking about, I think it was Lorenzo Falatea, was it not, that we hoped he'd get in at some point this year? Is he maybe on pace to join you at some point?
Yeah, he played a little last game. He isn't completely what he was before he got hurt, but I think just getting that confidence back and getting a couple of reps and feeling kind of embarrassed that he put some of those reps out there was good for him. As he came back and talked to me in the locker room and said, "Coach, I'm going to be better. I know I'm better than this," and just feeling like he should. So I wanted to protect him a little bit from himself because he felt like he was ready. But there's some reps on there that he showed that he's just not there yet, but he's almost ready.
So good week off for him then.
Really good week off for him, yeah.
All right, we'll take a break. We'll come back, talk some more with Coach Elisa Tuiaki, BYU's defensive coordinator. This is the Coordinator's Corner. You can tweet your questions in for Coach E at #CCBYU. We're at JCW's. I'm Greg Wrubell. He is Coach Tuiaki. We're back with more Coordinator's Corner right after this.
Picture this. You have a big change coming
Thank
up
you.
in your life and
Was there anybody else that we were thinking about?
Bring the family over to JCW's and order one.
Voice of the Cougars, Greg Wrubell.
All right, so welcome back inside JCW's in Provo for the Coordinator's Corner. Greg Wrubell with defensive coordinator Coach Elisa Tuiaki as BYU gets ready for Utah State on a Friday night up in Logan. The Utah State game, how much meaning does it have to you personally?
It's an exciting game, just like the game against Utah. They're both places that I've been to, and
yep.
This one is a little bit more distant because it was my first stop, and so I don't think any of the kids that I recruited are still there. But I've got a really close relative that's coaching the D-line there, and know Matt Wells really well because we coach together on the offensive side. So it'll be another fun one.
Yeah. So what memories and recollections do you have of life up in Logan, and did you guys get to play BYU while you were up there?
We did. So we got there, and and working on the program. And so we had, I think, lost 17 in a row when we got there, and I was there in 2010 when we finally beat BYU. So I know that for Cache Valley, for those kids, it's a big deal. I mean, they'll try to treat it like another game, but I'm telling you, it's a big deal to them to come up and play, and it'll probably be the most packed game in their stadium this year, just because of all the LDS members that are out there, as well as just people that want to see them succeed against us. But so it's a really, really big game for them.
So the last 35 BYU Utah State meetings, BYU's won 30 and Utah State's won 5. But it doesn't. But somehow it feels different than that to me. It seems like the numbers should be a little more tilted back to where Utah State's more competitive. The numbers are what they are. But that said, the Ags give BYU, generally speaking, a really tough game every time.
Yeah, and I think if it weren't for the game in 2010 and then the one 3 years ago, it would feel more tilted. But just recently, more competitive, and a lot of games that are really, really close, and really. I think it was the game where we ended up losing Taysom 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
And so I think they feel like it's more competitive. They kind of play with the chip on their shoulder, and a lot of in-state kids that were recruited that were either overlooked or whatever the case is, that ended up over there, that feel like they should either be here or Utah, and so it's always a competitive game that way.
So of your current defensive stats or trends, what are you kind of hanging your hat on right now?
I don't know if there's a stat that we can hang our hat on right now. We want to stop the run, and we want to create takeaways, but neither one of those have been good for us. And obviously you kind of look at the whole game and the amount of snaps that we're playing and all that stuff. And so whatever the case is, we've got to find a way to get off the field. Third downs have been really bad for us this year. We've the whole philosophy is to create third and long, long distances, and we've done that in the last several games, but we haven't been able to get off the field. Yeah. And so we've got to do a better job getting off the field, between coverage and pass rush and all that. And I think that it'll be better for us. But we're playing, 10, 15, 20 snaps more than we should be because our third downs are so bad.
Do you have a yards per rush number defensively that you have in mind that you want to hit every game or for a season? Or
I think 3.2 is good. Anything under 3 is really good. Yeah. And so that's we don't go out every game and say, okay, this is our goal. It's just we want to stop the run, which always equates to third and long. And we just need to get out of third downs, and we've got to stay off the field. And that always helps out too when your offense is doing a really good job and you're not defending as many snaps. And offenses on the other side have to get into the pass game and throw more, and you feel like you can rush the passer instead of have to stop the run. And then it always helps out with at least that statistic where you're not playing as many run snaps.
So you say 3.2 and under 3 would be great, and certainly that's true. In the last 11 seasons, I brought it up with Coach Lamb, BYU's been under 4. And under 4 puts you in the top 30 or 40 every year. Under 4 is a good place to be. Right now it's 4.12, so it's a bit over where you want to be. And by the end of it, you may be back in the 3s, but that's where you are right now. Red Zone, I'll give you a stat to hang a hat on. Red zone defense, BYU's 34th in touchdown percentage allowed in the red zone. And you can think about different times this year where you guys have stiffened and held teams to either a field goal attempt, turnover on downs, or turnover. And so teams have gotten in the red zone 22 times on you, scored just 10 touchdowns. That's something you can build on.
Yeah, no, that's definitely something that's good. And, I thought that they responded every single time that we've, a turnover where they have to get out there and make a stop in the last 3 weeks. But, I didn't think about that when they're doing a good job with it. Yeah,
that has been. And the overall red zone defensive number is top 50 as well. But BYU has stiffened, it seems, when teams have been in pretty good spots inside the 20. How much of the early season struggles are magnified by back-to-back-to-back top 25 teams, and to the point where you think things by the end of the season will even themselves out and you'll get a better picture once you've played 10, 11, 12 games?
Yeah, nobody really cares.
That's what Kalani said on our last postgame show.
Nobody cares. Yeah. Nobody cares who you played. Nobody cares how many people are hurt. I was watching the ticker and kind of watching. Who was it? USC played Cal, right? and they've listed the 3 starters that were hurt. It was like, nobody does that for us. Nobody really cares. And so we just got to find a way to win. We got to find a way to respond when somebody goes down, and when you're playing tough teams, which we wanted, right? I mean, you want it, then you get it, then you have to respond, and we haven't in the last 3 games, and so we have to do better with that.
You know, Coach Lambert brought the point up. So many BYU coaches on the staff have been a part of great BYU teams in the past, and all those teams, they were used to playing those kinds of games. So the whole ranked thing or great team doesn't really – the coaches aren't buying it. They're saying, hey, we still need to be that good to be able to compete with these teams, and you were just as recently as last year.
Right.
It's just been a rough start to this one.
Yeah, I mean, we've got to play good team football. Everybody's got to do their jobs, offense, special teams, and defense, and I think we'll have a shot. I mean, we just have to play better in all 3 phases.
More looking ahead to Utah State in our final segment of the show, which is coming up next. Greg Wrubell visiting with defensive coordinator Elisa Tuiaki on the Coordinators Corner. We're at JCW's, and we're here every Monday from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock. Thanks, Julian. We're back with more Coordinators Corner after this. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Ned Siegfried. It's great to see the Cougars back in action.
My peripherals are killer.
For over 100 years, the skilled electricians of IBEW Local 354 have helped Salt Lake City and the state of Utah grow and prosper. Our state-of-the-art apprenticeship program prepares our members for safe, quality electrical construction. Ask for IBEW electricians to get the job done right. First time, on budget, every time.
The time is now to hire IBEW electricians.
Jump farther, climb higher, and save more. With Mountain America's epic balance transfers, you'll get a 3% cash bonus.
Hey, can you guys turn mine down a little bit? Is there any way to turn mine down a little bit? It's kind of loud. Yeah.
Better?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yep.
Greg Wrubell and JCW's for the Coordinators Corner. Coach Ed Lamb was with us in the first half hour. Coach Elisa Tuiaki here in half hour number 2. To Twitter we go, hashtag CCBYU. From Spencer Lindeman, question for Coach Tuiaki. How does BYU's defense force more 3-and-outs and punts in general?
You know, the philosophy, at least with us, is we've got to win first down. You know, teams that mix it up pretty good as far as pass and run are difficult to defend because of that. But a lot of teams come out and they just run it, and so we've got to stop the run on first down, force them into pass situations where we feel like we can get after the quarterback and get off the field. And so, you know, last couple of games felt like we have gotten into that situation where we've forced third and long, but we just haven't been able to execute on third downs. And I think that's the biggest thing. So, get better on third downs. We're off the field.
Travis tweets in, how did recruiting visits go during the bye week?
They were good. Yeah, you know, right now we're kind of honing in on specific guys, and you know, went out to the Bay Area and saw a couple of kids, and you know, it's still a little early in the process, but we are starting to hone in on just specific kids now.
So that's pretty typical for a team like BYU in an early bye week, is to get out, get on the road, and see some kids.
Yeah. I think everybody does that.
Okay, Utah State. Well, one more question from Jeffrey before we go to Utah State. The D-line on wrapping up and tackling, how are they grading out to you right now?
It's not wrapping up and tackling right now. I think our guys, when they get the opportunity, that they're getting there. But our angles right now, which you You can't really see it unless you're watching the film. Our angles aren't good enough, and a lot of it just comes with youthfulness. So like Kyra should have 50 TFLs, but he just gets knocked back and doesn't know how to react yet to specific blocks and to movement and all that stuff. And
how much of that is just him being new to it all?
It's all him being new. That's what it is. I mean, he's strong enough, but just being new to the game, it just takes some time. It takes some time, especially because everything for them happens so fast and it's right there in front of them. To get a couple snaps, more snaps under him will get him a little bit more familiar with schemes, just which way things are going. And I mean, he's going to be really, really good, and he is right now. When you watch him,
yeah.
A lot of people see him and he sticks out. He's big, he's physical, and all that, but he's going to be a lot more disruptive once he gets to know the game.
Utah State's played a couple of P5s, a couple of non-P5s, big wins in the non-P5 games, big losses against the P5s. So what do you make of the Ags through 4 games?
I think with the new offense, you can tell that there's some things that they're kind of holding over. They do a really good job with screens, which I think is one of the things that they held over. Personnel-wise, I think we match up real well. There's a couple of kids that were here on our team before as walk-ons that are there now that are playing, and our kids are familiar with them, and so I think it's a good matchup for us, and I think that it should be a good one for us.
How do you like their quarterback, Kent Myers?
He's a good player. He's a good runner. Having a couple seasons under his belt, you can really tell it shows. Mm-hmm. The other kid, Jordan Love, is I think going to be a good player, but you can tell that Myers is a little bit better just because of how many snaps he's played.
They've given it away 10 times, 10 giveaways in 4 games. A lot of that through the air, and you again are struggling for takeaways right now. Is this a good match that way, or can you simply look to a team's tendencies and say this is the team we get better against, or is it really not about that?
Yeah, no, I mean, they struggle, I think, up front, which always equates to quarterback throwing more picks. And so if we can dominate up front with our defensive line, I think we can pressure this kid a little bit to throw us a couple of balls that we can get after.
What do you think the offense has done or will do in Game 5 that they can maybe take and learn from, correct from the first 4 games?
I'm sorry, that's that.
BYU's offense, yeah. BYU, as you kind of see what's happening, amongst coaches, what do you think can be done to help improve where they've been struggling early?
It's hard for me to say just because I'm not in that room and I don't know exactly what they're looking at and what they're saying and everything. And in college we are completely separate, and so they have their room and their things that they talk about. But I think anytime that you're struggling, whether it's defensively, offensively, in general on any team. I think the initial reaction for coaches is to start adding things or start doing things differently. I think for us, it's stick to the game plan, tighten things down. If anything, get rid of plays and just get better at what we're asking them to do. I think that's probably what we're doing. Is just trying to identify more of what we're good at and just keep doing it. Which I think equates to more of your offense having a personality. Was
Kalani his approach at 1-3 last year? Is it pretty similar to his approach at 1-3 this year? Do you think, in terms of an overall control of the program?
Yeah, he's never happy at a stage like this. I got to think back. I can't remember how it was last. He's pretty consistent normally. He's a guy that's really emotional, a guy that'll say what's on his mind. And so I think that it's been pretty similar. It's not good enough. We got to be better. We got to do what we need to do. Because these kids deserve to win, and we're good enough to win. We just need to put things together.
How much importance do you place then on the Utah State game in terms of what it might do or mean for your season? Hopefully.
I was here when Coach Lamb answered that, and I feel the same way. There's we need this win just like we needed the win last week, or 2 weeks ago against Wisconsin. I mean, we need a win. Get the morale back up and get the kids feeling like they're on the right track, and this is the most important game right now. We've got to win this one.
Now, in terms of what coaches can do versus what players can do to get things on the right track, where's the balance there, do you think? Who's it most incumbent upon to make the changes that need to get made?
From this last game, talking to our kids, I put that on us as coaches. We've got to do a better job. Whether it's demanding more or getting the kids to practice a little bit differently or just give more energy in practice, whatever it is. And so, they put it on themselves, we put it on us, and I think it's a little bit of both. But today's practice was really, really good, and it was kept us in good spirits.
Well, you know what it's like up in Logan. You know how they'll be treating Friday night's game. I'm excited for what's going to happen up there. Should be a lot of fun.
I think it will be. It'll be a good, exciting stadium to play in.
All right, it'll be a 4 o'clock pregame and a 6 o'clock kick for BYU and Utah State on Friday night. For Coach Tuiaki and Coach Ed Lamb in the first half hour, I'm Greg Wrubell. Thanking you for tuning in to the Coordinators Corner from JCW's in Provo. We'll see you next Monday. So long. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.